day, yesterday, or I guess not yesterday, but last class, we looked at finding the equation of a line, but we used a graph. Now we're going to do it algebraically. It means no graph, just information that we have. And so example 1 here is determine the equation of a line that has a slope of -5 and passes through the point C here, -2, 4. Now, the important thing here is just like the other day, is that the equation of a line is always going to be in the form y equals mx plus b. All right? And so when you have the equation of a line, the two things you need, just like when we had a graph, are the slope and the y-intercept. All right, now when you have these questions, sometimes it's a little bit obvious. It just tells you what some of the information is. And in this case, it tells us we have a slope of -5. All right, so that is, again, my m value. Because, again, I realize that some of you did this in grade 9, and maybe some of you didn't do so much of it in grade 9. All right, so now here's where we're at. This equation, now I can update it. It's y equals, I know my m is -5. And so I substitute that in. So I have y equals -5x plus b. Now we need to solve b, right? That's the second piece of the puzzle. And then as long as we have that, then we can write down our equation. Now here's the thing, and I mentioned this before when we were solving equations the other day, is that we have 1, 2, 3 variables in this equation. And to solve an equation, you can only have one variable. But here's the thing. If I can find or have an x and a y that work, and I can plug it into this equation, then I can find b. Well, I actually do have an x and y that work. And what I mean by an x and a y that work, an x and a y that are on that equation. This point right here, -2, 4. The -2 is our x, the 4 is our y. And again, those x and y's work because that point is on the line. It has to be on the line, or otherwise it doesn't work. So here's what I'm going to do. I am now going to sub in that point, so sub in point -2, 4 to find b. All right, so here's my equation. So again, the x is -2, the 4 is y. And so I substitute in. So therefore, my y is 4 is equal to, my slope again is -5. The x value is -2 plus my b. There we go. So because I subbed in an x and a y that work, now I can find my b. All right, so just rearranging this equation. So I have 4 on that side, nothing's going to change there. A -5 times a -2, that's a positive 10 plus b. Again, I'm going to move the 10 over to the other side, change a side, change a sign. So it becomes a -10. So now I have a 4 minus 10. Well, if I have 4 and I take away 10, I'm down to -6. And so my b value is -6. And so because of that, that's all I need. I can write the equation of my line, which is therefore we have y equals, again, my slope is -5, so I have a -5x. And then I have my b value, which is -6. And there's the equation of my line. No graph required. But again, we're finding the same things. We're finding the slope and we're finding the y-intercept. All right, so let's try another one because there's different scenarios we can get. Let's see here. Let's get rid of this. All right, so example number 2. Make sure this is nice and dry. All right, so these things always start up. Determine the equation of a line that passes through this is example number 2, passes through point M, which is -2, 1. So there's 1 point, and N, and an N. Oops. N. And that point is -4, 7. All right, there we go. All right, so again, as I mentioned before, and we'll mention several times, is that the equation of a line is y equals mx plus b. Oops. Mx plus b. And so we need the slope and we need the y-intercept. Now in this case, I don't have either, right? There's nothing that's telling me, hey, the slope is this or the y-intercept is this. With the information I have, does anybody know how I could possibly find the slope or the y-intercept? Don't leave me in a room here by myself talking to a camera. Anybody have any ideas?
I don't completely remember, but isn't it like y1 minus like y2 divided by like x1 minus x2? Like, I don't really remember, but something like that.
Yeah, you're pretty close. And what would that get me?
Your slope, your rise over run.
Yeah. So your formula is just a little bit different. Actually, it would work, but here's what it is yeah, your slope is equal to y2 minus y1 on the top over x2 minus x1 on the bottom. All right, so you're pretty much the same idea. Now, what do these things mean? So a little recap, right? Because I understand grade 9 math was a long time ago for you, everyone. What you do is the 2's and the 1's represent which point you're talking about, first point or second point. So because of the alphabet, I'm going to say that M is my first point. And that obviously makes N my second point. All right, so what the Y2 is referring to is it's the y coordinate of my second point. And so because N I said was my second point, the 7 is my y value. All right, so I have y2 would be 7 minus y1, which would be the y coordinate of my first point. So there's my first point is M, the y coordinate is 1. So plug that in. All right, and then down at the bottom, x2. That refers to the second point, but the x coordinate. So that would be my -4. And I got a minus sign in the equation. And x1, of course, would then be my first point, but the x coordinate, which would be -2. Oh, I got to watch here. I got two negatives coming together there. All right, so then I go and solve. All right, so 7 minus 1 on the top, that's a 6. No problem there. But then we have this situation. I have a -4 minus -2. And this is a little bit of grade 9 math, so I throw it in here, just kind of review. When you have two minus signs together, it gives you a plus. So that's really going to be -4 plus 2. So if I lose 4, I get 2 back. I'm still down 2. All right, then I can simplify that fraction. Again, this is something I try to stress in grade 9 or in any math class. A fraction is just a divide by question. It's not done yet. So this 6 over -2 is just 6 divided by -2, which is -3. All right, so there's my slope. Pop that in there. So now I can go back again and update my equation. I have y equals my slope, -3x plus b. All right. Now, this is the same situation we just had. And that's the great thing about these questions. The start can be different, but the end typically isn't. It's always the same generally. And so if I have an x and a y that will work for this equation, I can find my b value. Here's the best part, is I've got two x and y's that will work because we have 2 points that this line goes through. So I can pick either one of these points to sub in. So I'm going to sub in points. I'm going to sub in the first one, m, which is -2, 1, because smaller numbers. That's the only reason. All right, so I'm going to sub in point -2, 1 to find b. All right, so again, that means the x coordinate's always first, y coordinate's always second. So if I sub those in, let's see here. My y is a 1, so I got a 1 there, equals -3. My x value is -2, and plus the b. All right, so now we have an equation just with b in it. Do a little bit of math here. So again, a negative times a negative is +6 plus b. All right, I'm going to move that 6 over to the other side. Again, change the side, change the sign, so we have a -6 equals b. And whoops, my b is starting to look like a 6 here. There we go. That's a b. All right, and well, 1 minus 6 is -5. All All right, so there's my b value of -5. Once again, now that I've got all the information that I need, I've got my slope, I've got my y-intercept, I can write the equation of the line. So I have therefore y is equal to, my slope was -3, so I have a -3x, and my y-intercept was -5. There we go. So again, start was a little bit different, but the ending was the same, except for the fact that you got to choose either point. You had a choice there. Last question, we didn't have that. Any questions about that one at all? Before I erase it. All right, so I'll try another one here. All right, so example 3. Let's see here. Let's see what information I have now. All right, whoops, get rid of that too. All right, so it always says determine the equation of a line. Let's see here. So example 3. We got determine the equation of a line that passes through. Oh, I'm not going to do example 3 because it was just like example 2. Let's do example 4 though. So let's get rid of that 3. We're going to do example 4 because it's a little bit different. So determine the equation of a line that has an x-intercept of, what do we got here? -8. Okay. And a y-intercept of 12. There we go. So there's our 2 pieces of information. All right. And so again, here's my start. Y equals mx plus b. Right? Got to find the slope, or I got to find the y-intercept. Or, sorry, I got to find both. All right. So in this question, I look and I determine the equation of a line. It does tell me something right away. It tells me the y-intercept. Perfect. Don't have to do any work for that. That's okay. So I put a 12 here. And so now I'm going to go over and I'm going to update my equation where I know now I have y equals mx and my y-intercept here is 12. So let's put that in. All right. Now, I've always said that the finish is always the same generally. This one's just a little bit different because, again, I'm looking for, if I have an x and a y that will work, I can find m. But there's a secret little x and a y that work here. I've already dealt with this. Part of this is that the y-intercept is 12, but I still have got this information. The x-intercept is -8. And here's what that's telling you. That's a point. All right? That is a point. And here's what point it is that the x, when you have an x-intercept of -8, so there's my x-coordinate, the y value is always 0. So that's a secret way of telling you a point. All right? So now that is an x and a y that work because, again, that point is on the line. So I'm going to, again, my finishing move is the same, only this time I'm finding the slope instead of the y-intercept. But same idea is that I'm going to now sub in that point, that x-intercept, which is -8, 0, and this time to find m. All right, so here we go. Therefore, again, here's the updated equation. A y value, 0 is equal to m times x, and x is -8. And I have my y-intercept here, which is +12. Now, right here, this is not m minus 8. This is m times -8. So I'm going to rewrite it as we normally would with polynomials as -8m plus that 12. So I didn't do anything there. I just rewrote it. That's all I did. All right, but I want to solve for m. So I'm going to move. I've got to get my variables on one side, my numbers to the other. So I'm going to move this -8m to over to the other side. And again, change a side, change a sign. All right, and let's see here. I'm going to divide by my numerical coefficient. And let's see here, my m value is, these 8s divide each other out. My m value is 12 divided by 8. Now, here's a couple of things. You could just convert that to a decimal. I believe it's 1.5. Or you can leave it as a fraction. This would be the only time in math, in every course, that I ever leave a fraction as a fraction. But I'm going to reduce it to lowest terms. So I can divide both the top and the bottom by 4. So I get 3 over 2. And the only reason I'm leaving it as a fraction, and you don't have to, is because I want to see the rise and the run. This line has a rise of 3 and a run of 2. So the pattern of the line would be up 3, right 2, up 3, right 2. But now I do have my slope. That's all I wanted, 3 over 2. Or like I said, you could just say it's 1.5. It doesn't matter. It's the same thing. Just looks different. But now I have my slope. I have my y-intercept. I've got my two pieces here, right? So now I got therefore, got to have a therefore statement. Y equals 3 over 2x. And again, what was my y-intercept? 12 plus 12. There we go. So that is the final equation of that line. Anybody have a question? Go. Let's check the chat here. No, we're good. Okay. All right. So then last one, example 5. Let's see here. Get rid of that 4. Let's see what information we got here now. I'd like to change it up, show you a bunch of different things. All the different scenarios. All right, so example 5 says, determine the equation of a line that has a slope of negative 3 over 4. All right, and x-intercept of 12 again. All right, different line, but same x-intercept. All right, there we go. All right, so slightly different. Again, the pattern of this line is because the slope is negative 3 over 4, just a little bit of grade 9 review. The pattern of the line would be down 3, right 4, down 3, right 4 if I was graphing it. All right, but I'm not graphing it. I just want to find it out. So again, here's our starting equation. Y equals mx plus b, got to find my slope and my y-intercept. And so again, with these questions, I always look to see if something's telling me, hey, do you know the slope of the y-intercept? And of course, it is telling me the slope, negative 3 over 4. Now, because we're dealing with calculations here, and I'm not graphing this thing, I'm going to flip that to a decimal. So negative 3 divided by 4, because again, a fraction is just a divided by question, it's not done yet, is going to be negative 0.75. All right, so now because of that, I can update my equation. Y equals the slope here. I'm doing an equation here, so I'm going to have a negative 7.5, or negative 0.75 times x plus b. And again, we get to this point where we need an x and a y that work. All right, so what point would I sub in? Can somebody help me out here? What point?
Seeing how the x-intercept is always for y is 0,
Yeah.
so y would be 0, therefore, and x would be 12. You could substitute.
Yeah, this point right here is 12, 0. You got it. All right, so now I'm going to sub in that point, the x-intercept, which is 12, 0. This time to find b. Last time we found m, this time we're finding b. All right, so again, your x-coordinate is the first one, so that's my 12, and my y-coordinate is the 0. All right, so we do the same thing I did before, my finishing move. All right, my y is 0, so we plug that in. All right, the slope is negative 0.75. My x value is 12, and plus b. All right, so do a little bit of math here. Well, 0, I can't do nothing with it. negative 0.75 times 12. Negative times the positive is going to give me a negative. Type into my calculator here. I get negative 9 plus b. All right, and the last step is to, well, not the last step, second last step is to move that negative 9 over to the other side. Changes sides, changes sign, so it looks like positive 9 is going to be b. Now my last step, I've got my equation, I've got my b value here, it's 9. I write out my equation, which is, therefore, y is equal to, it doesn't matter how I write down my slope, whether I write it down as a fraction or a decimal. It's the same number. I don't care. It just looks different. I wrote it down as a fraction last time. I'm going to write it down as a decimal this time. So negative 0.75x. And my y-intercept is a positive 9. So the equation of the line is y equals negative 0.75x plus 9.